Welcome to the webinar on capacity building in agriculture water management through our working group on capacity development, training and education. It gives me a very great pleasure to welcome you all, especially our seniors, Professor Dr. Bart Schulz and Engineer Russell Rollason from Australia, and Dr. Waba from from Egypt, our chairman of the CDTE. The seminar will be moderated by Dr. Vijay Labsetwa, who was with us, and currently he's actively participating in the CDTE. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Engineer Pradeep Purandare, also from India, who is also participating in today's panel discussion webinar. So today's webinar is on capacity building in agriculture water management. Is in intensive care unit, can it be rejuvenated? It's a very interesting topic, and without taking much time, I would request Dr. Vijay to take up the conducting this webinar and take up the webinar.
Thank you, Secretary General Ashwin Pandya. In the series of various webinars, we have lined up a panel discussion today, and I would like to share a brief background with you. If you just give me a second. I'm trying to share my screen. I have several things opened up.
See on the bottom. Yeah.
That's not what I want to share. Okay, great. So as Ashwini ji has said that the panel discussion is on capacity building in agriculture water management is in intensive care unit. Can it be rejuvenated? I'm using the term intensive care unit from the newspapers that are using it. And this term comes from there. Now, before we proceed, let me briefly refresh. All of us know what capacity building is. The process through which individuals and organizations achieve their objectives.
Can you please open the file, please?
Can you see?
We can see only the directory. There is no file.
But मेरे screen में तो दिख रहा है. It says you are screen sharing.
No, your screen you are sharing, but not file.
Yes, your screen sharing shows list of files, not the file opened.
You go to application window and then find the file which has been opened and then share it. Otherwise, हमारे पास ये फाइलें हैं. All these files are there with us.
Presentation is with us, but this version is not with us.
About the presentation is the same.
नहीं तो फिर हम उनके behalf पे कॉल देते हैं. It's okay, you can speak. Okay.
Sorry about it. The file is open on my laptop. I don't know why it is not seen.
No.
Share करो उसको.
You go to share screen. You first go to share screen and see there is a window which will be having your file name, and it is that window which you have to share. Can you send that file to us so that we can share it from our end?
It's already with you.
Chote Saab, you can start sharing from the Delhi headquarters.
Yeah, okay. I think now okay. Now it's okay.
We have done it.
You have done it.
इसको थोड़ा enlarge कीजिए सर.
उनकी रिबन ऑफ कर दीजिए.
ये उनकी तरफ से चल रहा है.
उनकी तरफ से चल रहा है. अच्छा.
ठीक है, बड़ा करने से.
Okay. Yeah, very fine. So we were talking about kind of refreshing ourselves on capacity building. It's the process through which individuals and organizations achieve their objectives and goals. According to UNDP, capacity refers to ability of individuals and institutions to implement decisions effectively and efficiently. Then there is also a term used, training, very often. Training refers to knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Now, knowledge can be acquired, skills can be learned and developed, but the attitudes are the ones which are difficult to change, difficult to acquire. Now, why are we talking of this topic? The simple reason is that population of the world continues to increase, and therefore there is likely to be shortage of food in times to come, in years to come. Back in 1996, World Food Summit and Millennium Summit in 2000, they had set up a goal to reduce the malnutrition, undernutrition by half. But the undernourished people still continues to be 768 million people in the world. And maybe because of the pandemic of last 2 years, this has crossed 1,000. So we would need to double the food production to feed all these people. Now, how would you feed these people? As we know, the irrigated agriculture produces twice the yield as per rain-fed agriculture. And therefore, the agriculture water management comes into picture. Much before the World Food Summit, ICID visioned this back in 1995 and established a working group on CEDT, Capacity Development Training and Education, where Tom Frank from UK was the chairman and Joe Stevens from South Africa was vice chairman. But the working group had to be closed in 2007. I was surprised. Why would a capacity building working group close? The reason given was lack of interest. We have to really explore. Are we facing the same thing now? So we'll look into it later. Similarly, the International Center for Excellence in Water Resources, ICID in Australia, has also suffered some setbacks. And we have our friend Russell Rollason from Australia, who will talk about it during our discussion. Now, to face this situation, in India, water and land managements were established back in 1980, 42 years ago. And unfortunately, we say that Water and Land Management Institute, the first one established at Aurangabad, is breathing its last. Why we are saying this? Simply because the institute has been transferred from Department of Irrigation to Department of Soil Conservation in 2017. This was shocking to me. How can Department of Irrigation transfer the institute that is required by their own personnel to Department of Soil Conservation? Now, Soil Conservation says that it's not our baby. The Department of Irrigation says that it is now with you. Therefore, very difficult situation. And I am calling it, or the newspapers are calling it, that it is in intensive care unit. Now, the question is, are there some institutions of this nature elsewhere in the world which are facing the situation? Maybe so. In India, the Indian National Committee, in cooperation with National Water Academy, has organized a Valmi meet. India has 14 such WALMIs across the country. And all WALMIs have finished their presentation and we are working on the report and the outcome of it. But regardless, capacity building is the only way to go forward. There is no way other out. It is said many times that capacity development is done by spare faculty in spare time for spare people. And deputing for training is taken as a punishment. Maybe not everywhere, but maybe the case many places in emerging countries, developing countries. Therefore, the question is, can they be rejuvenated before they reach ICD? We have to stop that. In India, the Central Water Commission through National Water Academy have initiated this step and we are looking into it. Today, we are going to look into it a little bit and raise the question, what may be the possible reasons for such catastrophic failure? Or what would be required to achieve sustainable agriculture water management? Now, let me stop here. This was the background why the working group of CDTE thought that we need to discuss on this issue. So now I would introduce our first speaker, which is Russell Rollason. So just give me a second. I will share my screen again. I guess I have to go back to full screen and then.
Vijay, please stop your screen so that he can start sharing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to introduce Russell.
Yeah, please continue. Please continue.
Yeah. So I have to share my screen for his this.
Yeah.
ये तो उनका presentation आ गया ना?
उनका presentation आ गया.
So you can speak. You can speak. That will be better.
Okay. Russell Rollason is from ICID. He has worked for the government of Australia. He had a long tenure. He worked in India as well. So he has quite an experience of water governance, water principles, a bit in India and a bit in many other countries. May I now request Russell to present his case, please.
Thank you very much. I'm just wrestling, there we are. Thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this discussion and especially to Dr. Vijay for arranging it all and inviting me to contribute. Just very briefly, a little about ICID. Something's already been mentioned about it, but it has three main functions: promote, facilitate funding and delivery of IWRM training and capacity building programs, both in Australia and overseas, arrange and host study tours to Australia for international visiting groups, and help establish partnership centres of excellence in other countries and communities. That's just a very brief introduction to who we are. I guess the main issue that I wanted to put on the table in terms of how we approach capacity building for water management for agriculture is the realities of climate change. I don't need to say much. Even our preliminary discussions, we've mentioned about the fires in Europe, the intense temperatures in Europe, right across Europe, and flooding elsewhere in the world. We've had indeed our experiences of recent severe floods in Eastern Australia. Climate change is intensifying droughts, flooding's increasingly severe, and the frequency of these events is increasing too. This is threatening food security. It's adding to the demand for food and our ability to supply the food, which Dr. Vijay has already referred to. There's a changing context for capacity building in agricultural water management. And within it is a need to look at more multidisciplinary and cross-jurisdictional approaches which need to be integrated into water management. we are facing changed circumstances, and it's requiring changes in the way we go about capacity building in regards to agricultural water management. We must also increasingly address gender equality, disability, and social inclusion in water management. A new approach is needed. Increased participation by farmers to help build their resilience. But the technology available is also rapidly changing. And we've seen the introduction of a wide range of new tools. They present new opportunities to engage farmers and show results in shorter timeframes. It offers opportunities for people-centered learning. I want to draw on one example of a managed aquifer recharge sustaining groundwater use at a village level intervention in a project in Gujarat and Rajasthan, that Australia's been working with partners on the ground in those two regions. It has developed participatory approaches, models, tools to enable villages to monitor groundwater and to understand aspects of annual groundwater recharge, the availability of groundwater for irrigation and crop water demand. What's significant about this is the fact that it's done through a mobile phone-based technology, the My Well app. And volunteers are able to record water data and through sharing through the app and a central system, make this data more widely available to improve the understanding of the groundwater situation. This in turn helps the farmers to understand what's going on with their groundwater and how they must change their practices to better manage their groundwater. But it's through this hands-on involvement, we're starting to see opportunities for greater participation. This rapid changing in technology is often referred to as the Internet of Things. Through smartphones, new tools are being put into the hands of farmers. There's new opportunities to empower farmers. And by empowering farmers, we can generate confidence, generate innovation, generate ownership, and provide the incentives for change. Change in practice, change in attitudes. The most difficult aspect of the lot has already been referred to. But by giving farmers the tools in their hands and access to this technology, we can help provide the incentives for them to make necessary changes. Some examples is remote sensing, be it satellite-based or drone-based, which is increasingly occurring too, to assess soil moisture. Remote controlled irrigation. There's some example on this page of Rubicon, an Australian company that provides remote controlled irrigation gates for canal irrigation. I also then wanted to pick up an example from a project in the East Gangetic Plain, again with some Australian assistance and a range of Indian organisations. It's provided access to two technology solutions. One to measure depth of water, the level of salt, mainly nitrates in the root zone, and also another one, the Chameleon Wi-Fi system, which uploads water data to a cloud-based monitor that enables the analysis of water productivity on farms. Let me just go to the next slide where I can illustrate a little bit more. This soil moisture sensor is a handheld device. It measures what the plant experiences, the moisture content around the plant itself. It gives output as colours. It has 3 sensors that go at different levels into the field, very simple little sensors. It shows the soil, it can show the soil water by patterns, not numbers. So in this piece of technology called the Chameleon sensor, it's a simple, easy to use tool that enables farmers to see if their crops need watering. It's now being used in 21 countries, 52,000 sensors in place, and I think is on the verge of being made in India. It's already being made in Southern Africa. It measures water at 3 depths with these 3 lights, as you can see on the illustration. Blue is wet, green is moist, red is dry. The farmer can access these readings through a handheld device in the field, but it can also be uploaded to what's called the Virtual Irrigation Academy, where it can be monitored over time. And a graphic representation not a graphic representation, but a patterned representation be provided back to the farmer. So it's a bit more detail than I've had time to explain here, but that website gives a lot of details and some interesting little videos showing how it works. So to conclude, I believe that refocusing capacity building for water management and agriculture can be rescued, but it may need a new approach that takes into account the new technology that's available. This new context of uncertainty of climate change is having dramatic impacts, and we must make irrigation at the heart of climate change adaptation. We need to focus on building resilience of farmers because our COVID experience in many countries in the world, including our own, saw many people left to their own resources to address the challenges. It may well be the same in climate change, that farmers will have to depend on their own resilience. And these new IT tools can offer manageable science and data for farmers to use, and we can help them in the use of it. I think my time has run out, so thank you again to ICID and CDTE for this opportunity.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you so much. That was a good one. We will hear more on IC1 during the discussion. Let me now move on to Pradeep Purandare, our next speaker. If you can stop your screen sharing, Russell.
I have. I believe I have.
Yes, you have done that.
Okay, fine. While I
share my screen also.
Yeah, please share your screen.
Pradeep wanted us to or do it for him, so I will share his presentation.
Please.
And let me see just a minute. As you said, I have to open his presentation first. While I'm doing that, let me introduce Pradeep Purandare. Pradeep Purandare is a associate professor, a former associate professor from Valmi, Aurangabad in Maharashtra. He has worked in Department of Irrigation, Maharashtra for 8 years, and then 28 years for Water and Land Management Institute. So he has a tremendous experience of Water Management Institute. He knows that institute inside out, and currently he's working as a freelance expert. So I now request Pradeep Purandare to proceed with his presentation. Pradeep.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. Great afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. It is great to be with you all, distinguished panelists of this webinar. I'm grateful to ICID for giving me this opportunity to be a panelist in this webinar. Thanks also to Dr. Vijay, today's moderator, who was my colleague in Valmi long back. We were both witnessed the rise and fall of Valmi, and we share many memories. That makes me nostalgic. I'm also happy to see my another friend, Dr. Balasaheb Chiute, in ICID office. He is also from Valmi. Today, I would like to share my thoughts regarding insights gained at Valmi, Aurangabad. Next. Valmi, once a vibrant institute, now on ventilator, as Dr. Lapshatwar has already made a statement regarding ICU. Valmi was established in 1980 with the help of bank, USA, and it was not established as a felt need of WRD itself. That makes the difference. Next. The mission statement of Valmi was transformation of in-service civil engineers from WRD into water managers. That was the mission statement. And the training needs assessment was done very seriously. It indicated that since the duties and responsibilities of target group include operation and management of main system of irrigation projects, that is reservoirs, main canals, distribution network. The target group needed to be trained in that area using T concept. Let me explain what is T concept. Training should be such that the trainee officer would get an opportunity to update his knowledge and develop adequate skills in his own discipline first, that is the vertical limb of the T. And then he would be oriented to appreciate the interdisciplinary linkages, to be sensitive to the demands made by another disciplines and learn to live with them. That is the horizontal limb of T. Next. But Valmi syllabus was not in sync with this TNA. The thrust of Valmi training has always been on water management on farm, which, though important, does not directly come under the purview of in-service civil engineers in water resources department. The syllabus was prepared by a group of agronomists, soil scientists, social scientists from World Bank, and that too, especially from Israel's. Civil engineers, unfortunately, were conspicuous by their absence. Next. System, it was never ever considered whether the irrigation systems in Maharashtra are compatible enough to implement the modern concepts of water management on farm, included in Valmi training. Open channel, stream controlled old irrigation systems in Maharashtra lack precise water level and discharge control and arrangements of flow measurement. Their functioning is problematic, and we have to go by a law of averages, and hence they cannot cater the individual water demands based on soil, crop, climate approach. Next. Valmi faced a double whammy. The syllabus was not in sync with TNA, that is training need assessment, and irrigation systems were not compatible to the modern concepts. So what was the result? Not even a single irrigation project was ever operated on the principles taught in Valmi training. Next. The irrigation sector reforms were initiated in Maharashtra, but they were aborted too. Valmi was a part of those reforms, and Maharashtra Water Sector Improvement Program, enactment of MWRRA and MMISF Acts and establishment of MWRRA as a water authority was a logical extension of those reforms. When the reforms themselves were aborted, it was the very idea of, which was the very idea of Valmi. Valmi suffered like anything. Next. Inordinate delay in preparation of integrated state water plan, indifference towards making rules of irrigation acts. We have got a Maharashtra Irrigation Act 1976, which is a parent act. The rules of that act are still not being framed. There is total absence of water management, then reluctance to convert irrigation department corporations into river basin agencies as required by MWRRA Act, and limiting the scope of water entitlements, severely limited, and only lip service to the basic concepts like volumetric supply is being given. That is what, these are the unfortunate facts that made Valmi training redundant and further weakened Valmi. Next. Let us see some of the administrative aspects of Valmi administration. The dominance of officers on deputation spoiled the whole game. Valmi is registered as society and trust by Wrdt GOM. President of Valmi, Secretary WRD by virtue of his post. And Valmi was governed by general body, governing council, and establishment committee. All were dominated by officers, mostly from WRD, the deputationist. All key posts, namely Director General, Joint Director JD, and Administrative Officer, were held by officers on deputation. Next. Next. Unfortunately, there was a rivalry, sort of rivalry, sometimes seen, sometimes unseen. It was a deputation versus recruited rivalry, recruited people. And I have made a statement here, and I will not read it out. Who hold the key administrative post, and what is faculty recruited by Valmi? What was the thing? The main difference was the government officials enjoyed government pay scale, government pension, and medical reimbursement, which was substantial. Whereas Valmi recruited faculty, though educationally superior, though they were having UGC pay scale, they are not given pension as such. It was a contributory provident fund and very meager medical reimbursement. All these things do matter and does make much the difference. Next. Transfer of Valmi from WRD to soil water conservation, as mentioned by Dr. Lakshatwar in 2017, proved to be the last nail on the coffin. WRD abandoned its own baby, and soil water and conservation department simply does not know how to develop this adopted child. That is the whole story of Valmi Aurangabad. I'm sorry I presented a true picture of Valmi, and I feel very sad about it, but I don't know how to improve all these things. Unless and until we feel ourselves that it is necessary, training is necessary, the civil engineers need to be converted into irrigation managers, I don't think anything will improve. Thanks.
Thank you, Pradeep Purandare. You took just about 7 minutes to finish those contents. The content was quite rich, and I'm sure we will have many questions to discuss on it. I request attendees to please keep showering the questions, observations, doubts that you have in the QA box, and from there we will take it up during the discussion. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Purandare. Now I would move to Professor Schulz, and let me see if I can find his bio. Just a second. Okay, very briefly, Professor Parth Schulz is known to ICID for a long time. He has been past president of ICID and a very active president. He has worked for a long time at IHE, teaching land and water development courses. And a few years back, he was also awarded the World Irrigation Prize from ICID. So with that very short introduction, I request Professor Parth to make his presentation. Parth, please.
Thank you, Vijay. Good morning or good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to present to you my thoughts about capacity building in agricultural water management. Can you see my screen? Is it okay?
Yes.
And you can hear me well?
Yes, please.
Okay, then I proceed. Let me start with my favorite slide. And that is who are really the actors in agricultural water management. And I made a distinction here in the parties that are really responsible and the parties that are contributing. So really responsible are the government, the agencies, irrigation and drainage agencies, and the farmers. The government, but these three parties, and what you will see in many countries, when they agree with each other, things are going well. And when they don't agree with each other, you will see that things are not going so well. And then there are many parties involved, many other parties, but they are contributing. And by the end of the day, they are not in charge. Consultants to make the plans and the designs, the contractors and the manufacturers to supply the equipment and to construct what is needed, the universities and the schools to train the people, the research institutes to find out problems and to solve problems and to find out new developments, the banks and the donors for the funding, NGOs and international organizations like ICID to discuss matters of joint interest, and also generally the NGOs in support of the farmers, and the farmers associations themselves. They are generally very good by discussing the issues that are relevant to them. I will go to the different roles of the three parties who are in charge. If you look at the role of the farmers, they are handling and organizing all the all-farm activities. It is their responsibility. but maybe they need from time to time support from, and then especially subsidies or training and education. Operation and maintenance of the field systems, that is their responsibility. The slide on the right side at the bottom shows a screen that you will see in the fields in Europe in autumn, when the farmers have to clean the drains along their fields. And they have to do that on an annual basis. And they have input and to an interaction with the main system level. Then the agencies, they are handling and organizing the water management activities at level. But they have to do that on the one side in agreement with and control of the farmers, and on the other side in interaction and agreement with the government. So all these parties, they have their links among the different levels in agricultural water management. If we finally go to the government is responsible for policy, legislation and control, and they are responsible for systems at regional or river basin or national level. So the real large systems, they are beyond of the scope of the agencies. And that is really a government responsibility. And also the policy making and the legislation. And of course, the policy and the legislation is very determining what finally will be done in practice. What we also see, and this is a picture not prepared by myself, but by our famous friend Wrdt from France, is overall an increase in farm size and a change from the rural area to the urban area. If you look at the population growth in the world, then the urban area is rapidly rising. And in fact, the rural population is going down at the moment. And in fact, it means that farmers have to become more and more food producers for the urban people. What are then needs, really the needs and the problems related to capacity building? The staff of all involved parties, both responsible and contributing, needs to have the required capacities and skills. It's as simple like that. When those organizations don't have the staff with sufficient skills, things will go wrong. Capacities to be adequate, not only for the present day, but also for the future needs with respect to design, construction, and especially operation and maintenance. Very often, it has been thought, especially by politicians, that when a new system is ready, it is okay, but it is not okay. It is okay when it is properly operated and maintained. And of course, you need to have a good basis to be able to properly operate and maintain it. There is a distinction in this world, more or less in the developed countries, emerging countries, and the least developed countries. The problems and the challenges are different in the three different types of countries. What you see in the developed countries, and we just saw the example from Australia, they are highly organized with well-educated and skilled farmers and organizations. In Europe, a significant part of the farmers, they have a university education even before they become farmer. So it is not the capacity building what is the problem there. There are all the problems for these farmers. In the emerging countries, you especially see the rural transformation, the increase in farm sizes, and the mechanization. Those are developments that go very rapid in many countries and will require a lot from the farmers and from the agencies in charge especially. In the least developed countries, there is the issue of poverty alleviation of smallholder farmers, infrastructure development, and improvement of the conditions in the rural area. So these are all different issues that play a role in the different type of countries. What are the means of capacity building? And in fact, one of the best means is on-site, direct interaction with farmers and the farmers with the associations, but also the farmers to farmer. I have seen in many areas that a lot of farmers could learn from their neighbor. And that is, we should not underestimate that. That is very practical education and very effective, especially in the least developed and the emerging countries, but also when the automation is going on in many farms, it is also good to know what your neighbor is doing. Classroom, of course, teaching at different levels and agricultural extension, and demonstration and research in the research station and the research farms. New media, automation, online instruction, and website information. That all opens a lot of means for information to the farmers, especially. And that is what I very briefly like to present to you as the issues that, in my opinion, play an important role. And based on those issues, of course, the education has to take place and the capacity building. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Schulz. You were very efficient and timely. You finished in 6.4 seconds.
I hope that is not the only thing I did good.
No. You brought some great issues. The linkages between farmers and governments and the capacity building needs are there to come because with the new technology, and was very happy to learn that the farmers have university degrees in Netherlands. All right, good. Thank you. We now move on. Of course, while I invite Dr. Waba, I request all the attendees to please shower your questions in the chat box, the observations, or in the Q&A box. Right now, those boxes are empty, so please do that. Professor Waba is from Egypt. He has been Vice President of ICID some years ago. He has done extensive research, administration, fieldwork in Egypt and elsewhere. He has expertise in training, water management training in Egypt. He was also president of the Egyptian National Committee sometime, and he has also taught in China as an external visitor, and I believe he's still associated with China. With that very brief introduction, I request Professor Waba to present his case.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay, and please, can you share my presentation because I'm talking from my mobile because I have electricity in my surrounding area.
Yeah, not issue. I will try. Just give me a second. Professor Waba has been very active in ICID. He's a chairman of the working group CDTE, and he's also the chairman of the African Regional Working Group, one of the very important active vice presidents in India. Can you see it, please?
Yes. Can you make it full screen, please?
Yeah. All right, please go.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. It's my great pleasure and honor to be with you today to talk about capacity building in agricultural water management. And I will go directly to the presentation. And why, please, next. Please, next, please. Why agricultural water management? Agricultural water management is vital to food security and poverty reduction. More than half of world's poor live in developed countries. There are many challenges for us how we can produce more with less, more crop yield with less water, less energy, less financial and everything. Management becomes an important key for achieving the SDGs. Next, please. Of course, as Dr. Schulz mentioned, we have to know who is the main partners for agricultural water management. And here we can see in the top, I started with the farmers from the bottom level, farmers, stakeholders, water users. And in the right hand, we have the high level from political leaders, decision makers. And then we have researchers, academic staff, private sector companies, and of course, the key arms for the decision makers, which is technicians, technical service providers, and manager, and so on. So it is very important for us to know who are the partners in agricultural water management. And then we can see next please. Of course, it is raised in the topic of the webinar, capacity building in agricultural water management in an intensive care unit. I see this is very good questions and why it could be happen. Of course, it is not a general case, but it could be happen somewhere and not for all the time. It can be for sometimes happen. As we mentioned, from India, from Australia, from Egypt, everywhere it could happen. We can see there are many reasons. Of course, it could be happen if there is a lack of capable staff at different levels, misunderstanding of the role of all parties, lack of long-term vision, lack of financial support, lack of accountability. And under this situation, which might lead to wasting of time, effort, finance, and at the end, wasting of resources such as water, soil, and crop. And at the same time, we can face more food gaps and increasing poverty. Next, please. How it could be managed? Of course, we have to know all the parties, as I mentioned, and must be included with the target group for these different skills. We must have a good environment for all parties to work together. Capacity building must be within a long-term strategy plan for country level and to cover all the parties under this important strategy. Training need assessment could be, and it is very useful tools. How we can select trainers and trainees, it is a good question. And of course, it needs a lot of effort and thinking and so on. How we can prepare training materials. After training, capacity building, we must have a follow-up, evaluation, feedback from the service providers, from stakeholders. So there are many tools we can evaluate and to do follow-up after the training and capacity building. Of course, accountability is a must. We cannot continue for training because, as Dr. VG mentioned, it is not logic to work or to continue working with spare time of trainees, of trainers, and so on. So then there is must accountability after the activities. Training and capacity building to help water users in operation and the maintenance of the irrigation system supplying their field. Next, please. There is no single model for capacity building to improve agricultural water management. Assessment of capabilities for all parties, engineers, civil, mechanical, water, irrigation, drainage, agriculture, technician, and administration staff also. There are two important players in agricultural water management, farmers and stakeholders. And I fully agree with Dr. Bart Schulz that there are more activities could be done and achievement from farmer to farmers. We can consider the role of pilot and demonstration farm. We can teach and train farmers, and then it could be continue from farmers to farmers. We have to concentrate on fields and practical training, like application of advanced new technology and innovative smart water management. and water saving technology and the state of art of technology in irrigation, drainage, agriculture, and so on. I mentioned one important player, which is farmer and the stakeholders, and of course.
Are you there, Dr. Baba? You have to unmute yourself first.
Hello?
Yes, please.
Do you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes. So I do believe on the role of young professional, and it is one of our main topics now to concentrate building development and education for young professionals. In fact, I see young professionals, they are.
Your voice is breaking. Your voice is breaking.
Is it okay now? Yes. You hear me now?
Yeah, it is coming, but it is breaking.
Okay, can I speak slowly? So the role of young professional, I do believe 100% young professional in a good area to become is a top and bottom list. And once we prepare.
Dr. Baba, can you close your video so that we can get better voice?
Is that okay now?
Yes, now it's better.
Yes. So I do believe on the role of young professional because they are in a good area and very close to the top level and the bottom level also. Once we prepare young professional, we guarantee to have a good future with our future leaders. Next, please. And by this, I think, I hope that I finish on time, Dr. Viji.
Yes, it's 8 minutes.
Sorry for that.
Not an issue. Are you done now?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Baba, for raising some good issues. Now we move into the discussion part, and let me commence with Russell Rollason. I just wish to know that what were the issues of ICID with the government of Australia?
There wasn't any issue really with the government of Australia. It was that partly, I guess, the issue that flowed from the impact of COVID was that there were few overseas students coming to Australia. And ICID assisted a lot of the overseas students who were studying at universities in Australia or coming on short courses. And as COVID started, I mean, the government basically closed the borders to international travel due to COVID. And so this meant that suddenly the people who ICID used to provide assistance to and programs to, and the funding that came with that, dried up. And so I guess that to some extent, ICID was a victim of COVID, but there had also been changing approaches. Rather than bringing people to Australia in larger numbers, increasingly training and assistance was provided in country rather than in Australia. And so that change in where assistance was provided and the impact of COVID ended up in causing ICID to have to reduce its operations significantly.
Okay, so there was no funding issue.
Well, indirectly, there was a funding issue in so much as the government was not providing scholarships for overseas people because they weren't able to travel to Australia. So it was really because of COVID, not because of a government decision.
Thank you, Russell. We have some questions in the chat box. Jeff Camkin, is Jeff available? Can you speak out? Can you unmute yourself and speak, please? Jeff Camkin. Or shall I read his question? Is Jeff Kempkin there? Can you hear us?
Dr. Vijay, the participants can't talk. They can only send via the chat box their questions.
Oh, is that the case, Madhu?
Hello. I can, looks like I can speak now.
Yes, please. Jeff, please go ahead.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, this is to any or all of the panelists. Can you make a comment about what you think is the right balance of the different forms of learning for capacity building? Things like formal education, practical training, on-farm experience, mentoring, etc. In general, do we have the right balance, or do we need to put more emphasis in any particular areas? Thanks very much.
Okay, Russell or Bart Schulz, who'd like to take?
I'm happy to comment, but perhaps Bart Schulz, would you like to start?
No, please go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, only a very general comment, but it seems to me that timeframes become important. One has to think about what the time frame for climate change impact is going to be. And in a decade, things may be much worse than they are now. So in helping to improve agricultural production, perhaps on smaller land holdings, as Professor Schulz has already indicated, what sort of training will most likely build resilience for small farmers? And these are not just small farmers in least developed countries, but in emerging countries, indeed, even in developed countries, some of these questions will arise. So I think the answer, response to Jeff Kempkin's question is that I think the practical training becomes much more central, and the mentoring can be clearly linked to practical training. Formal education will continue, but formal education can take several years, of course, and it's important, and I'm not downplaying it. But with the growing pressures on agricultural production and the shorter timeframes, I think a critical question is how do we build the resilience of farmers who are presently farming, no matter what scale they're at, to the impacts of climate change. And I suspect that's going to take a greater emphasis on practical training and perhaps mentoring associated with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Russell. We move on to our next question. Initu Joshua from Uganda. Is Joshua available? Please ask your question. Unmute yourself.
Dr. Vijay, please ask anybody who is interested in asking questions, they should raise the hand. In that case, it will be easier for us to give the access. Otherwise, finding the participant in the total list and then giving the access, sometimes it is difficult. So anybody who wants to ask the question, they can raise the hand, then we can give the access to speak.
Very nice. Thank you, Harishji. Please raise your hand so that we can spot you better and ask questions immediately. In meantime, there is a question for Bart Schulz, that is, what is your experience on the participatory irrigation management system?
Now, may I comment on this?
Yeah.
I was quite many years involved in lowland development in Indonesia. And initially, when it was the so-called transmigration program. And initially, when the farmers were settled, they were not yet familiar with the local conditions. And what you then see is that local facilitators who even often speak the local dialect, they work much more effective than external people. So just the local people who could sit down with the farmer and discuss things of joint interest, that gave an enormous boost in the yield finally. So the farmers learned how to work under the local conditions. And I have seen that in many other countries. So especially agricultural extension, just the local extension is very important in my opinion, because that is really close to the farmers. If I may use this opportunity, I also like to give a comment on climate change. I am not a critic on climate change, but if I look, so let me just accept what are the forecasts of climate change. But if I look around me, and that is especially the case in Europe, but I suppose it is similar in the United States and Canada, there is a lot of environmental legislation developing. And that legislation is gives a lot of constraints in the application of fertilizer and pesticides, and in fact in farming methods. So the impact of the environmental legislation, and I'm not against that legislation, I think it's good legislation, but will have, in my opinion, much more impact on farming in the future than the impact of climate change. So although we have to note the impact of climate change, it is, let me say, 20% of the problem. And the other 80%, we should not neglect that.
Thank you, Barshuj. Any hands raised?
But for Dr. Vijay, you can see the attendees list and then you can invite them who has raised the hand. Okay. There is already 3 or 4 persons have raised the hand.
Okay. In meantime, there is another question from Pawan Kumar Reddy from Barshuj. He's saying how we can keep motivation of the irrigation research enthusiasm in younger generation towards capacity development communities.
But look, if you are interested in research and you have a job that you think is interesting from the point of view of output, I think you will be interested. And if you are not interested in your job, it will not work. So you cannot force people to do research if they are not interested in research. What I see around me is that a lot of researchers are very active and do a good job. The major problem for them is to get the research results impacted in the actual practice. There is quite a gap between what the researchers know and what they do, and how much of their work is applied in practice. That is an enormous gap. And always when I am in symposia or something, they always say we have to do new research. But I always say, please also try to apply what has been found out already in practice. There is much more possibility to apply what already is known in practice than that all kind of advanced research still has to be done. I'm not against advanced research, it has to be done, but don't underestimate what is already available and just can be applied in practice when we focus on that.
Thank you, Barshuj. We have a raised hand from Suresh Kulkarni, please. Unmute yourself and speak. Suresh Kulkarni. Okay, while we hear from him, is Suresh there?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah. First of all, congratulations to ICID Central Office for organizing this very, very interesting webinar, which is very, very essential for countries like India. And especially I'm very, very happy to see our stalwarts, Professor Barshuj, Felix Reinders was here for some time, with Dr. Wahba. This is a great gathering, and after a long time, I could see them. Coming to this today's webinar, of course, it's a big and vast topic, but as I can see, I also worked with Vijay and Professor Purandre in Valmi for about 14 years. These Valmis have become really the schools of academic schools. They are not the training places. So teaching, for example, soil-water plant relationship to everyone is not a good idea. So I think there was not the training syllabus has not kept pace with the needs of the department or agencies. So we have a fixed program, and I can say it is some sort of forced training. The officers were forced to take a training. It doesn't really give any good idea, good impact on the capacity building of the officer or training or the stakeholder. And moreover, I can see, especially the states like Maharashtra or many other states in India, they are still in the construction era. Unlike, in European countries, they have already finished their building construction of dams long back, some 30 years, 40 years back. But in our country, still a lot of dams, reservoirs are being constructed. So more and more energy and more efforts of the Water Resources Department and other government agencies are, diverted to the construction activities. And as I can see, there is a very, limited, very small, this is engaged in the irrigation water management per se. So releasing water from the dams is a irrigation water management, unfortunately. So we are on one side, we are the Valmis have been trying to, educate in very scientific techniques. But on the other hand, the government departments, the agencies were not equipped for that purpose. So I think there is a big gap between what is really needed and what the government is, the agencies are doing. So I think first that's the institutional reforms are really required. From the top to level, right from the Central Water Commission to irrigation departments, so water resource department of each state, there is a great need. We have not changed since last 40, 50 years, like British era, with the same we have continued. So I feel that there is a great new big need of institutional reforms, including the Valmis. Don't see the Valmis which were there 40 years back. We are trying to revive the same Valmis which were born 40 years back. These times have changed now, like climate change, like Professor Balshu just said. So we really need to introspect. And then, and lastly, I have a lot of expectation, means of the whole world, that whole countries, emerging countries from ICID. I know when I was there, this group was very active about capacity building, and there were a lot of good leadership, of course, and a lot of inputs were there. But somehow, I don't know, even internationally, it seems that there is not much interest in this activity. So why this has happened? So I request the central office and the whole ICID fraternity to please reactivate, revive, rejuvenate this particular training and capacity building. This is a great need for the emerging countries, and of course to the least developed countries, it's definitely required. But countries like India, where irrigation is on very large scale, is really required. So we need to exchange the experiences, what is happening in Indonesia, what is happening in China, because we need experiences from the developing countries, not from the developed countries. So that I think this group need to be strengthened, and a lot of inputs are required from the best practices which are going on in the developing countries. So that's what I want. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. I think it was more of an observation than a question or something like that. Thank you for the suggestion in infrastructure changes and institutional improvements and so on. My next question is to Dr. Waba. Dr. Waba, ICID had this working group way back in 1995 and apparently closed because of lack of interest. And as we know, new technologies and models are introduced every day, and without capacity building, the officers will remain ineffective. So why is there lack of interest in training?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Vijay. I think it is misunderstanding, I see. It is a big mistake because capacity building, training, education, no time for that. We must continue forever if we are looking for sustainability, we have to continue training, education, and capacity building, capacity development. And I think it needs from us a lot of efforts. We need to rethink how we can link education at early stages with the state of art of science technology, because we have to prepare new generation from the beginning, and then we can train them later on. We can build their capacity, develop their capacity, and so on. So it is a package. And as I mentioned, there are many parties in agricultural water management, and all these parties must be work under one umbrella for national strategy plan for capacity building in water, irrigation, agriculture, and so on. Once we have to have this strategy, the role of each party, indirect or indirectly, must be activated. And I think, as I mentioned, it needs from us a lot of efforts. And I consider us here now in the CDTE working group, we are in an early stage. We need more and more together, and sure we will do more.
Yeah. Thank you, Muhammad. Training is a continuous requirement, and even all the officers who are already engaged needs to renew their skills from time to time. I would like to ask Mr. Purandare, you referred to dominance of officers from irrigation department. What proportion do you suggest, and can we do without them?
Can't do without them, but they also need to understand their responsibilities. They need to change their attitude. They need to be irrigation managers, not as only remain as civil engineers, and not also civil engineers. They only become officers. That is the main problem.
Yeah, would you suggest like 50-50 would be acceptable?
I don't think 50-50 will do. It's only percentage needs to be very less.
Okay. We have Rajesh Puranik in the audience. Rajesh, please unmute yourself and speak.
Okay. I think Dr. Rajender would like to say something before that. Yes, raised. Dr. Podar, you may go ahead. Please unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you very much, sir. I am part of this panel, and at the outset, I would like to thank the ICID Central Office and entire ICID family for creating a good atmosphere for activating working group on capacity development, training, and extension, starting from the President, Secretary General, and all of you. And special thanks to Dr. Waba and Vijay Labshetwar. They have taken great initiative to revive, and the way things are going on, and they are giving tasks every week, every month. I hope in the future days, this working group will definitely get activated. I'm sure about it, and we shall do it, and we promise. As secretary of this working group, I promise. And regarding this present topic, I have some observations and also some questions, sir, for the group. Now, when we have a whole set of materials in this world, for example, taking the case of irrigation, we have dams worth hundreds, thousands of crores, main canals, sub-canals, irrigation structures, everything, and a whole infrastructure, material infrastructure. But still, we are not able to deliver to the stakeholders, end users across the countries, especially in India and especially in my state. The question arises, why are we not able to deliver goods as promised to the end users? Huge taxpayers' money is involved in delivering these goods and services to the stakeholders and end users. I have been in irrigation sector for the last 30 years as professor and now as director of Valmi Dharwad. As a student, I have understood that a great knowledge gap exists and continues, that the system has become dysfunctional or poor performing, etc., etc. So that knowledge gap is tremendous. We are not able to acknowledge it, not able to identify and accept it. The systems, the governments, the people who are at the helm of affairs, they should understand that we are not able to deliver because of the great knowledge gap, in spite of all the material resource with us. Therefore, there arises great challenge or need for building capacity of all stakeholders across all the sectors, and especially so with natural resource management and agricultural water management. This is the need for capacity building, and it is a must. But unfortunately, the present system doesn't accept or doesn't place priority on this capacity building. I don't know, this question has to be asked. But I probable answer, with my little experience, I say, the national global priorities for such activities have been declining in general. Whether it is administrative capacity building or scientific capacity building or capacity building in natural resource management or agricultural water management, the general priority for such activities has been declining. And added to that, the priority attached to natural resource management has been declining. So now the question to the House or the general body here is, when there are the agencies like skill development, etc., being widely discussed, and at the same time, many and most of the companies in the world across the whole, especially micro irrigation companies and manufacturing companies, they have widened the scope of their capacity building. Now, Vijay Labshetwar sir, the question has to be answered whether this capacity building refers to all the sectors, all the sectors in the society, or only for public run institutions like Walmis, because quite often we are talking about Walmis. While there has been tremendous increase in capacity building of private companies, there has been a reciprocal decline in capacity building by the public institutions. This question has to be answered. And I conclude by saying few things, that all the stakeholders here sitting in here and beyond this group, we have to advocate or create public opinion in such a way that the capacity building, which is sine qua non for delivering goods, becomes a national priority. Some governments may accept, may not accept, but we have to see that as policy advocates, that the capacity building, jnana, creating knowledge, is a great tradition of this country. We are unfortunately losing from that the ranking. Therefore, public advocacy, see that capacity building becomes national priority. Like we have fixed many national priorities in India and many other countries. And second, why there is no demand for capacity building from the stakeholders or end users is the capacity building has not been able to fulfill their needs. That means the TNA has been faulty. When farmer is in need of particular thing, we have not been able to address, but we are giving him training. As somebody said, Suresh Kulkarni rightly said, the farmer expects something, we are giving him something. That there's a mismatch between the need and the supply. When he is not fulfilled with what his expectations, definitely there is no drive for the trainee to come and join us. And the third point I would like to say is, most of the officers, senior officers, do not permit the end of the day. I'll conclude within a minute. And therefore, the senior officers in the government department should also be convinced that yes, there is need for training, and the world has changed because of training. And the last point is feedback and the impact assessment of the capacity building, which utterly our capacity building institutions are lacking across the states, and I hope across the countries also. There is no proper follow-up and feedback assessment of the training program. If at all there is an effective the impact assessment, definitely we are making justice to the taxpayers' money, and there will be overall enthusiasm for capacity building. And I'm happy to share that in Dharwad, Valmi, Karnataka, we have had great satisfaction about capacity building. On a positive note, I am blessed, I must say, to this house. The government of Karnataka has been tremendously supporting Valmi Dharwad. The institution, Valmi Dharwad, was dysfunctional, not performing properly about 5 years ago. Thanks to government of Karnataka and several other agencies, Indian PIM, ICID, INSID, several agencies, our ministers and officers have been great support to Valmi Dharwad. We have increased our capacity building from 3,000 to 12,000. My human resource strength has increased 5-folds. Funds have increased 5-folds. We have got national award. There is always scope. And above all, we need very good, dedicated, transparent leadership for capacity building institutions. I, from my end with saying that we have a success story in Valmi Dharwad as far as capacity building in water management to pursue response from the field level. Thanks to everyone for listening to my few observations.
Thank you, Rajendra ji. You made quite a few important points for consideration, of course. And Valmi Dharwad is running well, as we have seen it in your presentation also, elsewhere in India. As you said, there's a mismatch. I think you are right. There is some kind of a coordination kind of thing is required between the government and the institution. For example, if a number of people are posted on a particular position, they all need to be trained for that position. Because transferring a person from reservoir operation to canal, to the land development, he doesn't know anything about it. So every year there are transfers in the government department. So they should be identified, and accordingly the training need should arise. So I agree with that.
Dr. Vijay,
Yes, please.
From ICID Central Office, I like to just interfere in your moderation.
Please,
we'd
please,
like
please.
to request our President Honorary Dr. Felix Renders to say a few words and share his experience. Dr.
Yes,
Felix.
Sure. Dr. Felix, please.
And then we'll have to conclude it. Because
we will take one or two questions and then we'll conclude.
We'll conclude in next 10 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Please, sir, you can continue, sir.
Dr. Felix.
So thank you very much, Dr. Vijay and the panel for the excellent presentations and really dissecting in terms of the water management and capacity building. But I think Dr. Bart Schulz really addressed the issues in terms of taking it from the different levels, and we should be looking at that. Because if you look on a global situation, the different levels in terms of developing countries, developed countries, as well as emerging countries, and how we can address it at the different areas on site, classroom, demonstration on research, as well as the new media. And I think the opportunities are there. It might have happened that in the ICID family, the capacity building, the interest was not really there, but it also depends on how we perceive it and what is the situation of the committee members in their different countries. But I think if one could revive it and really build, and that is a challenge for you, Vijay, in terms of taking it forward with the expertise of the panel as such, that has already been demonstrated by Russell Rowlandson and his team of Ice Warm. I had the opportunity to meet them there in Australia in 2018, where we really discussed the issues. The work that is at present being done by Dr. Waba with the young professionals, the work that has been done for many years by President Honoraire Bart Schulz, and is still being done by Vice President Honoraire Laszlo Hyde and his team in terms of capacity building, teaching youngsters so that they could enter and make a difference in terms of water management. And I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this esteemed group of people addressing the issues, and capacity building and training in water management is of vital importance going forward in terms of food security, because we have seen the predictions going towards a population that will reach the end of this year, 8 billion. We are talking about 9.8 billion by the year 2050. And the gap in terms of food supply is predicted to be between 40 and 60%. So we really need people to enter. And you can only do that through capacity building. Thank you very much for an excellent webinar, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Felix, for those excellent observations. As rightly said, the population is rising. There is likely to be a food gap, and we need to fill it. And I have also heard at some other fora that soil is being extinct, and we may not have soil in next 60 after 60 years. That's a completely different issue, of course. We have to do the water management here. Thank you, Felix. Is Rajesh Puranik still around?
Yeah, Dr. Vijay.
Yes, please.
Because we have a raised hand from Mr. Lufur Rahman. Let us give him chance first.
His question was already answered, sir.
Lufur Rahman.
Yeah. But
so yeah, raised hand.
They forget to put it down. They raise hand and they don't put it down.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Then we have.
We have to close in 5 minutes.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay. We have Gopal Chauhan. Please ask your question. Unmute yourself. Gopal, can you hear?
Good evening, everyone. May I audible?
Yes, please. Go on.
Yes, sir. I am a PhD student of IIT Bombay. I have just 2-3 questions. Like that, agriculture, water management, capacity building, development. There are various departments, line department, like that, water conservation department, agriculture department, and WRT. They are separately organizing various capacity development programs, and they are imposing on the water user association. They are building so much capacity to WUA, but no department is approached to academic institution to set an elective or to set an academic programs to train the students. Like that, our civil engineering syllabus even not included WA word. IIT Bombay syllabus, if you see any Pune University syllabus, there is no WA word in civil engineering syllabus. Even WA word is not in an agriculture university. So we are building capacity by so many organizations, so many training. So it's very, where to connect. Even CADA program also already mentioned that is the connection need to integrate all these departments. That is mentioned there. And another issue is that like that each department is not connecting each other or not sharing the data. MSA is hiding data, WRD is hiding data, agriculture is hiding data, water management, accounting, agriculture is doing different, WRD is doing different.
Gopal, please. Thank you. Could Pradeep Purandare take on that, please?
Pardon?
Gopal was asking that lack of coordination between the universities and the institutions, and they do not have.
I agree with him. I 100% agree with him. It is unfortunate that there is no coordination between these various departments. They are working silos, and the whole program regarding CADA, Command Area Development, the very reason of the failure of this thing, there is no coordination between these people. And as he rightly pointed out, in our engineering syllabus, civil engineering syllabus, there is nothing regarding the water management. These are the basic issues, Mr. Gopal.
Dr. Vijay, sir, I have every organization cannot take up all the activities. Each has its own mandate, but there has been a provision made in every institution's bylaws or MOA that they can always have a memorandum of understanding with whichever agency they are mutually beneficial. Each institution, universities as well as WALMIs, any other capacity building institution has been given provision to have MOA with any other institution or agency for mutual benefit. This gap can be fulfilled. Sorry, I'm bridged.
Yeah, thank you, Rajendra-ji.
That's theory that has not happened. That is the whole story.
Yeah, coordination and cooperation has to be done.
That can be corrected. Your observation is very much practical. it's happening, but that there's always scope for improvement, and the institutions and leadership has to come forward to fill this gap.
Right. Thank you, Rajendra ji. Last question from Piyush for Professor Bas Schulz. What are the ways water management needs to adapt to changes in the precipitation from climate change? Shall I repeat? You have to unmute first.
Okay. Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, I think that is different in the different climates, but you have to be very careful with historical records of rainfall. You cannot use the historical records to extrapolate to the future. So I think you have to work with some margin to see what you can expect in the future as good as possible, but there is a margin around that. And then you have to find out what is needed. I like to, very briefly, one story, I will not be long. I taught for many years students at engineering scale, both agricultural engineers and civil engineers. And every new course, I teach land and water development. I ask them, why do we make all these canals and all these hydraulic structures? And in the first lecture, I never got the answer of any of them. And then I just told them, look, we are doing all this work to let the plants better grow, because that is what we basically are doing. And for several of them, that was a surprise. They had never been thinking that their structure had to be made, or their canal, to let the plants better grow. And that is, in fact, the only thing we have to do. And if we do that in a proper way, and we take into the account the chain from the main system, the river basin, to the system, to the field, if we handle that as one chain, then we can do a good job. And when we are not able to handle that, we will not do a good job. That is the simplest thing I like to end with.
Thank you, Marshall. Very, very precise answer. Let us now move to conclusions. I would request Professor Waba to please make closing remarks, please.
Thank you, Dr. Deji. I would like to thank you all. Thank the ICID main office, Professor Bart Schulz, Dr. Russell Rollerson, and also Dr. Boranda. For it was a great pleasure and honor to have you all in this important webinar. And I see we touched today a very important point. And at the end, I think we all agree that we have to continue discussion about these important topics, because agricultural water management, it is the main way to achieve the SDGs. And it seems that there are many gaps everywhere, and it needs a lot of effort, a lot of coordination among all the parties. And of course, for us as expertise, it needs to support and to have more capacity building, training, education, and we will continue in this direction. And also, I would like to mention one important point for Dr. Russell about the chameleon tools. Already 1 month ago, we organized online training course for about VIA, and we found all, and also I discussed it with President Dr. Ragab, and finally we see this is very simple tool, and it could help a lot for achieving the agricultural water management, because it is very simple and tools could be used by small farmers. And like these very simple colors, it is a new language, new dialogue between farmers and scientists also, with the soil, water, and crops. And it could help a lot for improving the efficiency of water use, and how we can increase and to have more per less. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Felix, Honorary President, Dr. Felix. We enjoyed your contribution too much. I would like also to thank Vice Chair of the CDT, Dr. VG, for raising these important topics as to have all of you today with us. Also, I'd like to thank the Secretary General of the CDT working group. And sure, together, we need to have all our hands together, and we need to do more. And of course, and we are sure that we will and do more together. I'd like to thank you all, and I wish you all the best. And before to end, I would like to highlight the importance to consider the two keys for agricultural water management: small farmers and young professionals. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Secretary General Pandyaji, Harishji, Chivte, Madhu, Mukesh, the Central. Without their support, we would not have been talking for more than 1 hour now. Special thanks to all the speakers who spared their time, and in spite of being delayed, they were still available and made these presentations very rich. Thank you all. So let me now say goodbye to all.
Yes, in the end, from ICID Central Office, we thank our President Honorable Dr. Warshells, Dr. Felix Renders, Dr. Russell Ronason, Dr. Wahwa, Dr. Vijay, and Dr. Podar, who have taken this lead and then participated in the panel discussion. I thank all the participants who have joined online to listen to this panel discussion and the webinar. I thank all the participants who have raised the questions through chat box or through raise hand. And then we are sorry that we cannot give chance to all the persons who have raised hand because of the time constraint. We cannot go on forever for this type of webinars. So in the end, I thank each and everyone who have participated in this webinar. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Harishji. Without the participants, it would not have been possible. I can tell you that there were more than 100 participants. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.